if you don't go through the legal process properly, you find yourself in orange jumpsuit.
I think what separates the best attorneys are those that take it a step further and then give practical advice.
Hello everyone, once again, my name is Bibi Ofiri and today is Ask the Multifamily Expert. And in this edition, we normally bring in experts in the multifamily field or in real estate for you to ask questions. So it's not just for you to listen in, it's an opportunity for you to ask direct questions to the guests and you get your answers real time. So that is the purpose of this event. So if you have any question at any point in time, you will see a Q&A section in the dashboard area. All you need to do is type in your question and we'll sure to answer those questions. And if you cannot access the Q&A, you can also put your questions in the chat. For so many of us that's trying to start up in the multifamily industry, some of us do not understand the process. And the thing about it is that if you don't go through the legal process properly, you find yourself in orange jumpsuit. So it's very, very important for you to ensure that not just that you understand the process, you have the right partner that will help you go through the process. In this field, to be honest, I have seen good SEC attorneys or transactional attorneys and I've seen very bad ones. So not every one of them is good, but you need to look for the perfect one that will help you minimize the risk that you're exposed to. And that is why today we have Kai. It's a very funny situation. This is the first time I'm actually meeting Kai one-on-one, but we are both in the market blank space and I see him so active and I'm so active and I'm like, he's always posting legal stuff and I'm like, hi, wow, I will need you to come and speak to the audience because they really need this. And besides, I also have my own questions regardless. So I'll be asking you my questions and hopefully the audience would do the same. Before we dive right into the event, I would like to talk about our social media platform. We are on social media platform, on different platforms. We are on Facebook, official Bibi Ofiri, on Bibi Ofiri on YouTube. We changed the name from Blue Ocean Multifamily Group to Bibi Ofiri. So on YouTube, you'll see me as Bibi Ofiri. So all you need to do is just type Bibi Ofiri and you'll see more than 200 content. And it's a variety of different things about family and investment, about what is happening in the macroeconomy, about your why. We always put spotlight on the market and what people should expect along the way, especially in this period where you're sure to wake up with different news every day. I know some of you are in my own shoes that every day we put on our TV to listen to the news is one thing or the other, but truth be told, those things have direct effect on your investment. So it's important for you to follow us on those platforms for you to be informed about the things that are happening and how it can affect your investment. But today I have with me once again Kai, and he's going to briefly introduce himself. On this episode, we normally don't introduce the guests because we know that the guests will do better justice in introducing themselves. So I would like you to tell the audience who exactly is Kai.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you very much for having me. And yeah, we've kind of maybe seen each other's content for several months now. And I think kind of the mutual hard work kind of paid off to where we eventually, like the stars aligned. I think it was bound to happen. It's an honor to be here. And thank you very much for having me. My name's Kyle Swafford. I am the owner of Swafford Law Firm, LLC, where we specialize in commercial real estate acquisitions and dispositions. So buying and selling, as well as SEC compliance, whether it's a multifamily asset, triple net lease, industrial warehouse, hotel conversion to multifamily, self-storage. We've seen it all and we have several clients in the space. And then whether you're doing a joint venture, 506B, 506C syndication or fund, we've also have plenty of clients in that space as well and regularly are on top of the SEC compliance as you need to be in this environment. I have been in the commercial real estate SEC space for about 4 years now. In my prior legal career, I was a tax litigator. I litigated against the IRS on behalf of the taxpayers for about 4 years and then decided to kind of make a career path into multifamily, probably like many of you, right? You probably have a W-2 and are jumping into multifamily. I kind of did that on the legal professional side. And about 2 weeks in, I knew it was something I was good at. About 2 months in, I knew it was something I would do the rest of my life. And here I am. I've had Swafford Law Firm now for just right at 2.5 years. So it's been a really enjoyable ride, and we've gotten the opportunity to work with and meet great people along the way. So I'm very, very happy about the journey and looking forward to everything that's up next.
Thank you so much, Kyle. It's happy that you're able to tell the guests about who exactly you are. And I would like to also mention this, that for you to succeed in multifamily, there's some very critical partnership that you can't afford not to have. And one of them is people like Kyle. They will help you through your legal documents. In short, for me, it's priority. That is one of the most important partnership that you can't afford not to have, because it will walk you from the beginning of the process to your closing, from your documentations, because there are situations where you need to have some conversations with the seller. They will help you mitigate the risk, because all those documents that you're not able to read, they always slam you with a large number of documents. And you as a seller, because of so many things going on, you are raising money, you are doing your due diligence, you are having a conversation with your broker. So many things are going on at that time. You need someone like Kai to help you go through the paperwork and give you good advice, and you take the decision. They will not help you take the decision, but they will advise you, and definitely if you trust them, you go with their advice. So these people are very, very important, and that's why we're bringing it to you. So now we're going to dive into the Q&A. It's more like a question and answer. I'm going to start with, what are the key components of a real estate syndication structure? I know there are different structures, but if you can just tell us one or two different structures, how people can structure a syndication deal from start.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I can even share my screen and show a visual of the structure, and then you can send this to your participants afterwards if you'd like. So here's kind of a common syndication structure that you have here. Every syndication structure will have two entities, right? Sometimes you have three, which is the property owner. You have the property down here, in this case, Apple Creek Apartments. It is owned 100% by Apple Creek Property Owner, LLC. The property owner is the one that owns the property, right? That property owner, LLC, is owned 100% by Apple Creek Holdings, LLC. This is the syndicated entity, and you can always tell if it's the syndicated entity because passive individual investors are owners, right? So you know that when we're thinking about compliance and when we're thinking about what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, and what entity that is relevant to, it is always going to be the one in which the passive individual investors are members, right? Now, this holding has two members. One, the passive investors, Class A members, and two, the Class B member, which is the manager. Somebody has to make decisions about what the syndicated entity is going to do. That's going to be Apple Creek manager. And then the members of the manager are the GP team, right? So that might be, in this instance, that might be Blue Ocean Equity. And then we would put BB up here. It might be Blue Delta Capital. And then we put me up here, right? So whoever your GP team, they'll be right here. And if you have 7 members, then we'd add 7 other spots. This is just, again, for a visual effect. But this is the typical structure that you're going to see. You're always going to have that holdings entity. You're always going to have that manager. You may, but not always, have the property owner LLC.
Yes. I've seen cases where they only have 2 LLCs. That is one management manager LLC and the other one for the apartment. Is that a good structure, or what would you say it's the best that will protect investors if they decide to do? Is it the three LLCs like what I see on your screen, or the 2?
Yeah, I think this is the right structure. I mean, this is just a basic example. Depending on the type of deal that you have, the structure could change. If you had 1031 money, for example, you might have some co-tick borrowers down here, right? If you had a pref equity group, you'd probably add in another entity right here. If you had a lot of fees, or it was maybe a 200 plus unit property, so even if there's a small amount of fees, the amount of the fee is probably high, you might break the manager and the GP promote into 2 different entities. But just in terms of understanding kind of a basic organizational structure, they will all look like this in some way. There may be another box here, there may be another entity there, but every syndication is going to look like this one way or another.
Awesome. Yeah. So In this structure, how does it protect the passive investor? What are they exposed to, and what are the GP members exposed to in terms of risk?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes passive investors, particularly ones that cut a larger check, maybe the check isn't large enough to require being a guarantor on the loan, but it's still a sizable amount either way. What sometimes they will want to do is like, well, I want some input. And you need to protect passive investors against themselves, right? Because if you're a passive investor, you may not have experience in multifamily. You may not have experience in asset management, right? Or maybe you're just adjacent to it, right? Maybe you are a passive investor that owns some duplexes. Well, that's not necessarily the same as running a 100-unit apartment complex in Dallas if your duplexes may be out in Waco, right? So you need to realize is the strengths that I have applicable in this situation? And if they were, I'd probably be on the GP team. So the fact that I'm a passive investor, I should probably keep my input down as minimal as possible. But another reason that a passive investor does not want to have a lot of involvement in the ongoing operations of the company is because in the event that maybe the market turns or new properties come on the market, and then the property that you purchased goes down a bit in value, or the operations are poor, or the property manager that you demanded be hired does a bad job and steals money, right? If the passive individual investors start kind of getting in there and putting in their input and demanding certain things be done, they're actually opening themselves up to liability, because the other passive investors could say, well, I don't know who was calling the shots here. It certainly wasn't us. And you seem to be pretty vocal based on some of the phone calls or the Zooms or the email correspondence. So other investors say you're just as responsible in the event of a downfall as the other people. So you want to tell the passive investors, don't get too involved in the voting because you're passive. The moment you start getting involved, you become active and you start opening yourself up to all that liability.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. My next question is about legal documents and compliance. What are the essential legal documents needed for a syndication? Like PPM, OM, subscription, what are they?
Absolutely. So a PPM, also known as a private placement memorandum, PPM, and an OA, operating agreement, and a subscription agreement are all what most SEC attorneys would call the syndication package. My firm actually includes the GP operating agreement as well, which is the agreement amongst the GP team. We provide that as part of our package. Other firms don't. But really what it is a PPM is kind of like a one-stop shop for everything, right? It's almost like Walmart a little bit. You kind of get everything there, right? Yeah. So the PPM is going to say who the company is, who the representatives of that company are. Maybe in that example earlier, I said it would talk about BB and myself if we're on the GP team, right? It would talk about us and our background. It would talk about the property, all of the pros and cons of the property. It would highlight what we plan to do with the property. Maybe we're going to build some units on the neighboring acre, right? Maybe we're going to renovate units as they become vacant with the hopes to increase rent and overall net income, right? So the PPM is also going to talk about how cash flow and profits are going to be split. The PPM is going to say, who is this for? What type of investors are we looking for? Accredited or non-accredited, right? So the PPM has a little bit of everything. The operating agreement is purely how the company is going to be run. We are the manager. You are the passive member. Here's how we are legally agreeing to profit splits, whether that be pref, unpaid pref, then splits, fees, asset management, acquisition fee, voting rights, membership transfer rights. All of that is going to be disclosed in the operating agreement, because again, it's how the company is going to be operated is how this agreement is written, right? Operating agreement. The subscription agreement is specifically an agreement between the company and the investor as to some of the characteristics that are required by the SEC. So we may say, is this a husband and wife, or is this a spouse joint purchase type of investor? Are you an entity? Are you a person? Either way, are you accredited or not? Here's a list of what accredited means. If you're not that, then you must be non-accredited, right? Obviously, if it's a 506C deal, we don't even have non-accredited investors. I'm sure we'll touch on that later. But my point is the subscription agreement says, you investor are indicating to me that you've read the PPM, that you've read the operating agreement, that you understand it. Or if you didn't read it, you have the opportunity to do so, but chose not to read it, right? You are sophisticated. You understand the risks inherent in both investing and commercial real estate investing. And it's just about subscribing to this company and getting Class A units in return for capital provided. That's what that document is for. So again, the PPM has a little bit of the subscription agreement and has a little bit of the operating agreement, but the PPM is largely a disclosure document. Most importantly, the PPM is going to have federal tax risks. It's going to have mortgage debt risks. It's going to have commercial real estate risks. It's going to have construction renovation risk. Every type of risk that is conceivable in this type of investment, we're going to disclose it so that the investors can be as informed as possible. And that includes, by the way, disclosing any conflicts of interest. Like if I am on the GP team, I need to disclose to the investors that we may hire my law firm to prepare the leases, right? We want to disclose all of the way that cash can go to affiliated members outside of the cash flow profits, right? And that's actually where I see a lot of people get accused of commingling funds by not properly disclosing it. You can do anything you want to do, basically, so long as you disclose it. So disclose. That'll all be in the PPM.
Yeah. Is there any room for amendment? I know there's a room for amendment, but at what point will it not be possible? What can make amendment not to be possible on your OA, operating agreement? Yeah.
I mean, you can always amend it, especially the PPM, because like if you're adding a share class, for example, you would need to do that. But I think I get what you're saying. So the way that our documents are drafted in the operating agreement is the manager can amend the operating agreement for any reason, as long as it is not materially adverse to the investors, right? Because they're non-voting, right? The only reason they should vote is if something is materially adverse to them and then they get a say in it. An example of this might be, we're a 506B offering. We want to convert to 506C and advertise. But to do that, we want to create a new share class so that moving forward, it is clear that everybody that came into this company was a Class C member, right? Not a Class A member, a Class C member. The Class C units have no different rights. It's the same pref. It's the same split. Right? It's the exact same. The only reason that we're even doing it is to kind of make it easier with SEC compliance. Well, that's not materially adverse to anybody, because whether they were non-accredited or accredited, they were going to get the same pref or the same percentage of cash flow. That's not materially adverse. Now, suppose that you wanted to create a new share class where the previous members got a 6% preferred return. These new members get a 15% preferred return. Well, now cash, 9% of it is now going towards another group before we get to the 70-30, 80-20 split. I would argue that's materially adverse, right? Now, if a new group was getting 7, is 1% materially adverse? Probably not. But at some point, if you do something that an investor says, well, if I'd have known you were going to do that, I would have never invested in the past. When that type of comes up and it's pretty plausible that that's a true statement, that's when you go, maybe this is materially adverse and I need to rethink this position and talk it over with my attorney. So that is a situation where you cannot just willy-nilly do it on your own accord. Great question, BB.
Awesome. I've seen cases whereby you close a deal. We're going to go to 506B and 506A shortly, but I still want to dwell on this PPM and all that. I've seen cases whereby you're raising funds and maybe before closing, you're not able to raise the complete funds. Now, my question to you, because I've asked different attorneys, but I've not gotten the exact answer, or maybe I'm looking for a particular answer that I've not seen. So let me ask you again. At what point do you stop collecting funds or raising funds on a deal? And if you do, what happens to the investors that are coming in after you've closed on a deal? Definitely, I believe you have to amend your OA to include, I don't know, what are the process that you need to do after you've closed on a deal and you are bringing in new investors to the deal? How would that work?
Can I create an example and then make sure that it's in line with what you're saying? Okay, let's say that you're purchasing a property and your raise is $1.5 million. Right? You need $1 million as the down payment of equity. You need $200,000 for interest reserves with your lender. You want $200,000 for operating reserves for, when bills come due and you just want to have an extra money in the bank. And then maybe you want an extra $100,000 as the acquisition fee. Again, I don't know, right? Yeah. I believe that's $1.5 million. So in theory, all you need to really do is raise 1.2 million to close, right? You need the 1 million down equity or down payment / equity, and you need the $200,000 interest reserves as required by your lender, right? So if I were your attorney and you were preparing these documents, I would have said, why don't you do a raise of 1.7 million up to 1.7 million? Because then once you get to 1.5, you can close it. You don't have to raise up to the amount. You can always raise with less. So in order to close on the asset, again, to your question, you only need to raise 1.2 million. You could raise that extra 300,000, the acquisition fee and cash flow post closing. And that's not a detriment to your investors at all. I don't even think you have to create a new share class to do that. So you would be well within your rights to continue a post closing raise. Where that gets tricky, BB, is if you closed on the property in like December and you were doing a post closing raise in January and February, and we're trying to allocate depreciation, right? And we're trying to figure out at the end of the year in December, these were who the members were. These are the people that get the depreciation. And if you did a bonus depreciation concept, you might really dump all the depreciation, get massive losses in that first year. Then people investing in the year may not get as much depreciation benefits, right? So that kind of may make your post-closing raise a bit more difficult, but that's more of a tax component. That has nothing to do with the SEC or any sort of legal practicality within your operating agreement.
Exactly. Like for us, we closed the deal in December and we were still raising afterwards. We spoke to all the LP members and we told them that everybody should file an extension so that to give us the ability to raise more funds. So everybody agreed and we have an extension, and that gave us the opportunity to raise funds, and we have more investors, and everybody now will now benefit from the filing because we've not filed the taxes for that. Is that a good strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if I were a sponsor or an operator and I were raising money from investors, I would tell them, just so you know, while this opportunity should provide you with great passive income, you are probably going to have to file extended tax returns just by the nature of, the P&L and getting the CPA to get all the income accurate and then drilling it down into ownerships. Like I don't know many operators who file by March and April 15th. I mean, it's almost always an automatic extension, right? So that may just be one of the things you want to tell investors is like, just so you know, you may have to file your extension. I completely agree with that.
Awesome. So now let's dive into 506B and 506C. There's typically always a gray line and one needs to just be careful. So I would like to ask you, how do you determine when to use a 506B and when do you determine when to use a 506C? And what are the gray areas that one should be careful about when using 506B? In short, let's start with what is 506B and what's 506C for the audience, for those people that do not understand what exactly we are talking about.
Absolutely. Let me see if I can pull up another little snippet real quick just to kind of show maybe like a little chart. I know I've done that before. Give me 1 second. I kind of like to think of it though, to answer your question, as 506B is for both accredited and non-accredited. Here's kind of the tips. When you have a 506B, you're limited to up to 35 non-accredited investors. And we'll get to what that means in a second. You can have as many accredited investors as you want. You can raise as much money as you want. You're allowed to rely on what your investors say that they are. So if an investor says, I'm not accredited, you're allowed to rely on that. If they say I'm accredited, great, you're allowed to rely on that. You don't have to independently verify that with any sort of attorney letter, CPA, tax return, or anything like that. But, and this is where people get tripped up, you are not allowed to advertise or generally solicit your offering. What does that mean? That means if you're in a 506B deal, you're not allowed to post on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, hey, I have an apartment deal in Atlanta called Apple Creek Apartments, and we're raising, $1.5 million. We're offering a 8% preferred return and 70-30 split. DM me if you're interested. You are not allowed to do that. One, you're advertising. Two, you're generally soliciting, meaning you are asking people to do something with you. That's a solicitation, right? Awesome. So you're not allowed to do either of those things. Now, some people will say, well, what if I'm only friends with, what if I did it on Facebook? Because all the people that I'm friends with are people I'm actually friends with, right? It's called Facebook friends. It's like, if you can go to an SEC official and say, I know all 2,000 of my friends, ranging from my best friend's grandmother all the way down to my ex-girlfriend's brother, right? Then have at it, right? My guess is you can't really do that, and you're going to have a hard time proving it. So again, you want to stay away from social media. You don't want to even indicate really that you even have a deal under contract on social media if you're doing a 506B, because you're not allowed to, get the hype going, right? You're not allowed to say cool things coming soon, wink, wink, DM, or whatever. Like, you're just not allowed to do things of that nature. Now with 506C, you can do that. You can get a smoke plane and ride your advertising up in the clouds if you wanted to. You could get a banner behind one of those planes like you see at the beaches, right? You could get a billboard. You can tweet. You can do whatever. You can advertise in any way you can. You can walk up to people on the street and just say, hey, would you like to invest in my deal, right? You can do all those things. But the people who actually invest must be accredited investors, and that must be independently verified. Now, what that means is you get a CPA letter, you get an attorney letter, you see their tax returns, their W-2s, you independently verify apart from their own statement that they are accredited investors. So you might be thinking, well, what's accredited investor? And generally speaking, an accredited investor is anybody with $1 million net worth, excluding their primary residence. Again, excluding their primary residence, or they make $200K a year for the last 2 years with the reasonable anticipation that they're going to do it in the third year, or if they're married, $300,000. So if they made $200,000 in 2023 and $250,000 in 2024, now here we are in 2025, they're with the same company, they're W-2'd, it's not commission based, they can reasonably assume that they're going to make the same amount of money, they're accredited, right? They're accredited. And in a 506C, the way that you would prove that is you would say, hey, do you mind sending me your pay stub from, December of 2023 and 2024? Because you'll see that gross earnings right there. And then bam, now you know. That's an easy, painless way to verify. Outside of that, you probably have to do a W-2, which has someone's social security number. They don't really want to give you that, or their tax returns. Again, they may not want to give you that. Also, just by the way, there are plenty of companies out there that will independently verify your investors for you at the cost of $40 per letter, maybe. And they'll do it through secured portals. The investor will know that you're not actually getting those documents, so maybe they feel comfortable with that. So you don't have to put this burden on yourself. You could enlist some of these third-party companies.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now we're going to go to the liability, risk, and mistakes. At what stage should a syndicator engage an attorney in the deal process?
I think an SEC attorney or a commercial real estate attorney, which
both or transaction one, yeah, both. Let's talk about both. Yeah,
I tell people you should engage your attorney when you submit an LOI that you reasonably believe is going to be accepted. Like your best and final, put it on your attorney's radar, right? Because the attorney may want to send an engagement letter, right? And they can be creating that engagement letter while you wait to get the LOI executed, right? So I tell people, don't wait until your LOI is accepted. 5 days later, the broker's calling you demanding a PSA, and then it's like, hey, attorney, sorry, I need this done in 24 hours. That's not going to be well received, right? So I also have a sample LOI, BB, that I can email you that you can, again, send to your participants. Yeah. In that LOI, I've done a couple of things for you. One, I've included that the buyer will provide a first draft of the PSA. This allows you and your attorney to be drafting the agreement on your behalf, kind of playing home field, like in sports,
exactly.
Right? You would much prefer your attorney draft a PSA with your benefit in mind than reading the seller's attorney's PSA with their client in mind. Now, I've done plenty of deals where I've reviewed the seller's attorney's PSA. I'm not afraid of it or anything like that. And most attorneys have. But again, you would rather play Game 7, of the NBA Finals at home. You'd rather play that at home than on the road. So it does that, and it just spells out a really good timeline for you. So I think that LOI would be good for anybody that wants to use that. But yeah, so my point being, when you get your LOI executed, particularly one that says you'll provide the first draft of the PSA within 5 business days, then go ahead and send that to your attorney so that they can put that in their queue and get that out within that deadline. So that like the last thing you want to do is like on day 5, send it to your attorney and go, oh yeah, I need it, by the way, that's when I tell people. Now, that's just on the commercial real estate side. On the SEC compliance side, if you were wanting to hire an SEC attorney solely to prepare your syndication documents, I would say that you should hire that attorney when you know that you are going to do the deal. BB, I think you would agree with me that most deals, particularly multifamily, are what I call a 30-30-30 timeline. 30-day due diligence, 30-day close, 30-day closing extension, right?
Yeah.
If on day 15 of your 30-day inspection period, you know that this property is solid, it's great, you're going to renovate these units, you know there is nothing that could happen where you are going to terminate in the DD period, I would go ahead and maybe talk to the SEC attorney at that point and just get your capital raise going early, right? But what some people, they want to hit the ground running day one of the LOI. When we're still negotiating the PSA, they want PPM documents. And I'm like, you need to lay eyes on the property first. There could be units with black mold. There could be pictures of the parking lot that weren't shown that need repaving. The roof could be repaired. Like you don't want to start capital raising for a deal that you don't even have under contract, but let alone one you hadn't even seen. I mean, how embarrassing, BB, would it be for you to raise prematurely $500,000 and then give it back to your investors because you did the inspection and the elevator shaft was riddled with drug needles, right? Like that, you would just look so silly because you should have done that to begin with, right? So does that make sense, BB? Like I would make sure
yes,
that you know
that is it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. How do you vet? And let me tell you why I'm asking you this particular question, because I've seen situations whereby I have a transactional attorney and they will help you fight to the last, help you get as much as you can get on that deal. But I've seen some that will not even move. They will just take whatever the other attorney is saying and bring it back to you and say, they said this and I know them, they will not accept it. You might need to go ahead with it. In other words, they are not protecting your interest. So my question to you is, how do you vet the right syndication attorney for your deal?
I try to get a feel for the attorney's personality and kind of the way that they give advice. I think there are plenty of attorneys out there that give legal advice. I'm not even saying that it's good legal advice. I'm just saying there are plenty of attorneys out there that give legal advice. I think what separates the best attorneys are those that take it a step further and then give practical advice. So like, sure, you could do this, but like practically, I don't see it ever coming up. Or, I was negotiating a PSA with a client and the seller, I was representing the buyer. The seller did not want to give reps and warranties that the documents were accurate. And I said, and the seller was like, well, that's just not normal. And I told the seller's counsel, I was like, well, it's not our problem if the documents aren't accurate because we didn't create them. And if your client didn't create them, that means the property manager that your client hired didn't create them accurately. I don't really care who's to blame, but it's not us, right? So you need to do something there. What we ended up agreeing to was the seller would state that the documents are provided in a manner in which they would reasonably rely on. Like, if we prepared it, it's accurate. If we're receiving it from a third party, we're receiving it in a manner in which we would use it in our normal business operations. And my client didn't really like that. And I was like, well, let's look at that, right? So like legally, could they point the finger at their property manager and say, they prepared it, not us, can't sue us? Sure, but practically, why would they want to poo-poo their relationship with their property manager? And if the documents were incorrectly provided, usually that's still a rep somewhere else or something anyways. And then I was just like, I mean, what are the odds that they would try to tank this deal past the inspection period and then try to defend against a fraud claim, right? Like practically, like where's our risk here in this? I don't really see it. So I was able to kind of tell the client, is it legally what you wanted? Maybe not, but is it practically what you wanted? Yeah. So I think you're fine there. So that's just like one example, meaning some attorneys would have just redlined it back and probably cost you the deal because at some point, if you just aren't going to budge, you're going to lose the deal because this is what I tell people all the time. Sellers have all of the leverage until the contract is signed. They do not have to sell to BB. They do not have to sell to Cal. They don't have to do it at the purchase price, whatever. Like they have all the leverage. Now, I mean, I get they're facing foreclosure in 3 days, right? Whatever. But I'm just saying, like generally speaking,
yeah,
they have all the leverage. Once contract is signed, the buyer has all the leverage because whether I decide to terminate during the inspection period or not is totally within my own control. And I can do it on the final day if I wanted to. And if I want to exercise the closing date extension, I can because I'm in control of the timeline, right? So I tell buyers, be very careful with the hard lines in the sand that you want to draw because the seller doesn't have you, right? Like, I'm not saying that we try to make it a win-win for both sides or anything. It kind of needs to be, right? Like, I'm not over here advocating for seller rights if I'm representing the buyer. I'm just saying, hey, practically here, don't be so difficult in the PSA that you lose the deal, right? Let's make sure that we get something under contract that we can live with and protect ourselves. And we're able to do that 10 times out of 10 times, right?
So my question again, is there any way that we can know that this particular attorney is not protecting our interests? It will literally put us in trouble if we keep going with him. When do we say,
Yeah, I think
no, we
if your
can't work
attorney
with
is
him?
pretty passive and it's just like, I don't know, tell me what you want to do, and they're not explaining what you want to do and how that could either backfire or be a good thing, if they're just, accepting whatever seller counsel wants, they're not really advocating for you there. Like, I'm not the legal tail that wags the business dog, right? What you want to do in your operations, let's go do it. But you came to me for advice, right? So if you're not getting advice, what are you paying for somebody to read a document? Read the document, you could have read the changes, right? I mean, you want to know what it means and why they did it. So I think that's kind of where some of the attorneys miss out, is just being passive and not assisting their clients. I think another big issue that a lot of attorneys have, particularly in the syndication space and particularly in the commercial real estate conferencing world, they're over capacity. I have a firm belief that if you say everyone, you eventually say no to everyone. Like, yes, I can do your deal, can do your syndication docs. Yes, I can get your PSA done. But if you're saying that to 30 different people, it's going to be, no, I can't meet that deadline. No, I won't be able to get that on time. No, Friday's not going to work for me. Right. So what a lot of law firms do is they just say yes to every client that they can get, and then they eventually just don't have the capacity to do it. At my firm, we are very thoughtful about our capacity. And I've actually turned cases away because I knew where closings were coming. I just wouldn't have the time to do it. And other firms don't really do that. They figure it out. They'll work on the weekends, but they don't work on the weekends, right? So you want to ask the attorney very directly, do you have the capacity to see this from start to finish, right? And ask, do you have the capacity? Do you have the manpower? Am I going to be dumped off on an associate's desk that just graduated law school and, doesn't know anything about POIs or LOI or PSAs or LOIs or anything, right? Like, am I working with you or am I working with this? Like, are you going to dump me off to paralegals and summer interns, right? Or are you the person that I'm going to be working with? Are you the person that I'm establishing the relationship with? And that's the approach that we take.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Kyle. I have a lot of questions, but time will not allow me. But I would like you to tell the audience, because in a syndication deal, we have the transactional attorney and also the SEC. And I've seen cases whereby a particular firm handles both, or some would say, I only do the transactional aspect, go get someone else that'll do the SEC. So in your firm, first of all, the name and what do you guys do? Do you do both or do you do one? Also, I also want you to tell the audience how they can reach you.
We regularly do both for our clients. And in fact, in some instances where we were retained as the SEC attorney on the following deal, we got the commercial real estate and the SEC work. I mean, I don't have any clients where I only do their SEC work. I usually do the commercial real estate and the SEC work. And I think that just goes in line like with what I was saying earlier, right? Like, if there's 2 weeks left on the inspection period, we usually reach out to our clients. Hey, if you're going to syndicate, here's the questionnaire, right? So I'm always thinking about your timeline, probably more than the client is in some instances. We do both. If you need a PSA, we got you. If you need the title commitment reviewed, we got you. Survey, we got you. PPM and operating agreement, we got you. Filing the federal and state security filings, we got you. Reviewing loan docs, we got you. So we can literally help you from start to finish on the purchasing or sell a commercial real estate asset. For any of those that want to reach out to me, my law firm again is Swafford, S as in Sam, Wafford, Swafford Law Firm, LLC. Here's my website. If you want to find out more about us, you can. Our services, here's my team here. Here's a bunch of podcasts that I've been on, and eventually this one will be uploaded to that. But if you want to reach out to us, you can go here to the Contact Us tab. Your name, your email, your phone number. Are you interested in commercial real estate, syndication, joint venture? Hear about us. Maybe you mentioned this webinar, and then you just type in a message. As soon as you submit that, it goes directly to my email, and my response time on these is inside of 24 hours. So if you wanted to reach out to me, you could do it that way. or you could email me directly if you wanted at Kyle, Kyle, at SwaffordLawLLC.com. That's Kyle, Kyle, at SwaffordLawLLC.com. The only reason I might suggest that you still use this contact us form is sometimes I don't want your email to filter into my spam accidentally, like happened with you when we tried to schedule this initially, BB. So I do want to make sure I get your email. I will always get this contact form. I may not get your email. So try to do both if you can.
Awesome. I will be reaching out to you on our next deal, definitely. And we'd like to do something with you going forward. So guys, please, you've seen Kyle. This is one of the relationships that you must have if you intend to do real estate, especially multifamily syndication. You need them to take you all the way. I've seen cases whereby it was a non-recourse loan, but I don't know what happened. They made it a recourse loan, and it was our attorney that was able to identify that mistake before we signed, and they still apologizing, and thank God we saw that and everything was sorted out. So you need these people on your team to help you throughout the process. We've finally come to the end of today's edition, and it was really wonderful talking to you, Kyle, and I gained a lot. Yes, I've been in this for quite a while, but I still love to hear different perspective on how different people conduct or do things in the real estate industry. Once again, if you've not subscribed to our YouTube channel, now is the time for you to go to BB Ofiri on YouTube, and also official BB Ofiri on Facebook, and on Instagram, blue_MF group, and also on Instagram as BB Ofiri. So if you can locate B_MF group, you can also reach me on BB_Ofiri, and on LinkedIn, BB Ofiri. Every time we post very educative, informative content for you to continue on your multifamily journey. There's no education that is too much for your investment, because you also don't want to put in so much money and lose your funds in that process. Thank you so much, Kyle, and I'm sure the audience enjoyed our conversation today, and I look forward to continuing this relationship with you going forward. Do you have one last thing to say? I see you're posting something. Yeah.
I do. One last thing. So you can also follow me on Instagram, which is CRE_attorney. That's CRE_attorney.
Okay.
And if you look, you'll see that we've gone through quite a tips series, both on LinkedIn and Instagram. So we started with, way back in the day, we started with mindset. We got to LOI tips. We got to PSA tips, due diligence tips. We're kind of finishing up our capital raising tips right now, which will then go into loan doc review, closing, and operations tips. So it's going to be quite the tip series. Take a look at those. Maybe they'll help you for those people that haven't started yet, or even if you have, maybe there's some stuff in there that you can put into your operation. So please follow me on LinkedIn as well.
I just
also
did.
Here on Instagram.
I just did. I followed you back. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. I just wanted to mention that, and I forgot to earlier. But BB, thank you so much for your time, and to the attendees, I really appreciate your time as well. And I hope that everybody got some really good value out of this. Thank you so much.
So, we're also streaming live on Facebook currently, and we're also going to put it on YouTube. Yes, this audience is just for them to ask questions, but it's live somewhere else while we are talking. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kyle, and thank you everyone, and have a beautiful day. I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time for our next episode. Thank you all.
Yes,
Bye.
ma'am. Thank you.